Welcome, my friends. Welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Tuesday, August 30th. Time for another episode of the Power Hour. I'll be joined by the team from Pittsburgh Power. We'll hear from them in just a couple minutes. Then we'll get to your calls and questions. It's a maintenance free-for-all today. Anything that has anything to do with maintenance and repairs and modifications, troubleshooting, all that stuff, pick up the phone and join us. Lines are open. Calls are already starting to come in, so jump in. 855-950-3835. Later on today, we'll be doing an episode of The Pit. Not sure what time yet. We'll see how the morning progresses. I've got a couple things, but I think I'm going to bring in the team from Pittsburgh Power. So, Pete, are you guys on the phone today?
So I'm on the phone. Jordan's trying to get our system set up. We were having problems with our internet, so hopefully we'll be able to get that fired up here shortly.
Got it. All right. So where's Bruce going to be today?
I believe on his cell phone because he's not here.
Okay. So I don't have Bruce on here yet either. So I guess it's you and I right now this morning. What's on your mind this week?
Kevin and Pete show then. That'll be interesting.
Right. That's right. What's on your mind this week?
A couple of things. One, we talked about big camps. I know it's kind of old and somewhat irrelevant. Nearly all day long, that's all I do is take big cam calls.
Wow.
And it's crazy. You'd be shocked how much we sell in big cam parts. I'm still shocked. Pat's our pump guy. He's 3-4 weeks behind doing pump and injectors and some other components. I have a MVT unit, and they haven't made an MVT unit since 1985, and he's got that to work on.
Wow.
We're still doing a lot of it, and guys want these old trucks, so we're going to take care of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do a lot of that.
Yeah. So let me ask you. Let me ask you something. You said he's like 3 or 4 weeks behind in the pump room there. At one point, the pump room almost disappeared, right? I mean, that's how you guys got started. That was a big part of what you did in the very beginning. It almost disappeared, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes. So I would say 10 years ago, I was worried that what's Pat's going to do? Because all he does is components,
right?
Again, you could learn to shop, but at what point do you want to do that after doing components your whole life? And then all of a sudden, we just got busy again.
Yeah. To hear that the pump room is now 3 to 4 weeks behind sounds bizarre.
I think there's a couple of things. One, there's very few people doing it. Unfortunately, Pat started tech school, so he started at 19. So a lot of these people that have done it in the past are retired.
Yeah.
So I think there's few of them. It's a big investment for equipment. And then are you going to train someone to learn something that is going to die off at some point? There's no two ways about that.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. I think one of the reasons it's back is what we've been talking about with the complication of the new engines, trying to get parts for things, the downtime, the cost, the complexity. I think there are some people that just say, look, I just want a nice, simple truck I can count on every day.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, absolutely. And I had a gentleman call today and wanted to know if we carried DD15 turbos. And generally, we'll get one if we need one. It's not something that gives us much problems.
Right.
And I said, no, I would have to get an engine serial number and look to see if there's any out there. And he said, no, they're on national back order.
Wow.
So I didn't ask him what year it is. Apparently, DD15 turbos are on back order right now. And what's nice about these NTCs, we can cheat. There are ways around. If this turbo doesn't work, this will get you by.
Yeah.
Chance injectors. So we have a truck in the shop. Someone called up, hey, do you have a fuel pump for my truck? And I said, well, no, I don't. He said, well, I need one right away. I said, well, I have one for another CPL. The fuel pressure is the same. It's very similar engines. I know it'll work. He said, I'll take it.
Yeah, right.
Takes it. And again, you can't do that on the newer stuff.
No.
We know, and just through experience, we know what you can and can't do. You can't just throw anything on there. I knew that this would be safe.
Right.
And next day, he's like, I don't have any power. So we think there's a problem with the pump. We're checking things for him. Then it turned out, and when he said, I need a fuel pump, a shop told him he needed one. So I just took that as it was tested and it was a bad pump. I didn't ask any questions. And turned out, as we're talking to him, this was the exact same problem he had before. Low power, and it was low fuel pressure. Misfire, smoke, runs off. So we're checking things out, pull out an injector, tips blown off. Pull another injector, tips blown off. Before we did that, though, we checked the settings. What we assumed was they were just going to be loose. Someone set them wrong and they were loose, which would cause them to smoke and run rough. Here they were too tight. Instead of 90 inch-pounds, they were 150 inch-pounds. And the plunger hit the cup so bad it broke the tips. So 4 of the 6 injectors had holes in them. The other 2 I couldn't tell, but they were dirty. I didn't feel like, 4 of them's bad. That's good enough. And I think what happened was it's not going to atomize fuel because it's just instead of a 8,000 diameter hole in 8 of them, there's one hole that's 50,000 in diameter, so nothing's getting atomized. And I believe that's why it didn't make fuel pressure, is because it's just going straight through the engine. Now, we won't know that until we get injectors, and of course, I'm waiting for the shop that did it, that made the mistake sending injectors to cover it for the guy. So I'm waiting to get injectors here to verify that that's going to fix that problem.
Right. All right.
But, even if they weren't, I don't have those injectors. They're on back order. But again, I know what I can get away with using should we had to.
Yeah.
Where, X15, DD15, you're putting exactly what belongs in there or nothing else. But apparently the shop that worked on it was able to get a set. And because it was their mistake, they're going to cover it for them.
Oh, good. Yeah,
Which is a good thing for him.
It was a year ago we were really talking about the supply chain shortages and all the container ships sitting off the coast. And, we're not talking about it much anymore, but it seems to me like it's worse. It hasn't gotten any better. I keep hearing of more and more shortages.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing they're saying, which could make it worse. So with COVID in China, they would lock the people in the warehouses or the factories, and they worked. They don't have a right. And we wouldn't do that here, but they did it over there.
Yeah.
So some stuff was getting made. Well, now with the power shortage, because of the everything is dry and they don't have the hydroelectric dams functioning like they should because of the low water, there's no way around that. They simply can't make the parts. So it's probably going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, I don't see it getting any better. It seems to be getting worse. And diesel was coming down week after week. It just shot up 20 cents this week. Diesel's back over $5 a gallon again.
Yeah, I see gasoline has come down a little bit, but it dropped a fair amount at a time. Now it's just a few cents each time you see it drop.
Yeah.
It kind of isn't doing much right now.
Yeah, what's weird is it shot way up and then back down. Had it just shot up to this point, we'd still be screaming about how expensive it is, but it seems like we're getting a break when we're really not.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we're happy with 25%.
Yeah,
$4.25 for a gallon of
historically, anything over $4 a gallon, we were screaming it was going to crash the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's over $4 a gallon, and we're acting like it's a good thing. Well, look, it came down.
Yeah,
yeah, but it's never
it was
been
$5, so we'll
this
take
high for.
$4.25.
Yeah, it's never been this high for an extended period of time like this.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You can see why things are costing more.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anything else today?
So one other thing, a quick thing on pyrometers. We get guys calling up with, what's your pyrometer supposed to read? And it really doesn't supposed to read anything because it changes depending on load and throttle position and RPM. And, it's constantly moving. What we look for is what is the maximum amount that you see. And, these pyrometers, a lot of these trucks are old. They get bounced around quite a bit in a truck. And I'll have guys call, it doesn't get over 600 degrees pulling a hill. Then there's something wrong.
Something's wrong. Yeah.
Pyrometers they need replaced if they're old. They can be tested. We bought a little tester that you'll set it at 300 degrees, and then you look at your gauge to see if it's 300, then 600, 900, and 1200. And there's like a green and red, which is considered good or bad.
Yeah.
And if it's in red, then the gauge is no good. You check the gauge first. If it's good, then you put the lead wire on it and check it that way. If it's off, then the lead wire is bad. And thermocouple generally works or doesn't.
Right.
It usually doesn't give a false reading. But, these pyrometers are important, and if you have one in there, you got to make sure it works. I get a lot of guys call, and I'll ask them, "What's your pyrometer doing?" And, well, it doesn't work. It needs to work.
Yes,
it's a pretty important piece of equipment.
Yeah. Yeah,
and not terribly expensive.
Right. And that lesson about it's not so important that it's a certain number. It's, what's normal for yours in all these different situations. We could say that about almost every gauge on the truck, that you shouldn't worry so much about an absolute number, but you should be watching your gauges enough that you're familiar with what all your gauges are doing at different times, whether it's temperatures or voltage or whatever, oil pressure. No two trucks are identical, so just get used to knowing what all your gauges look like when things are working right. And then if something isn't working right, go back and check all your gauges and see if there's a clue there.
Exactly. Yeah, gauge is important. When people call with gauge readings and accurate ones, it really helps us give them direction of what to look for.
Yeah, really does. All right, we are going to talk to Bruce now. Bruce, welcome. Oh, let me hit the right button there. Bruce, good morning.
Kevin?
Yes.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can. What's on your mind today?
I just want to say that back in the race car days, there was a saying, metal fatigue is a racer's biggest enemy. But let's look at a semi-truck pulling a hill. It's working harder than a race car did because a race car has no load. So metal fatigue is a trucker's biggest enemy. Whether it's a frame breaking, or spring hanger, or a valve, connecting rod, rocker arms, but stuff can break from metal fatigue. And then people always want to know, why did it break? Well, sometimes things break.
Yeah.
And there's no answer.
Yeah.
So
that
and I had that call yesterday.
Yeah.
I dropped the valve.
We've talked about that before when people have something like this happen and they'll say, but I've been doing oil samples. Why didn't I know? There's no indication of metal fatigue. You're just not going to see it. There's no way to know it's coming. And when it happens, it just happens. I always remember mine, and it's kind of funny. We have David Counts on with us today. He's going to be up next. When I was down at his shop, and, I'm bobtailing a truck with 700,000 miles on it. Engine runs great. No indication anything's wrong. And you break a rod. No load, no nothing. Yeah. I was going 35 miles an hour and decelerating when it broke. Came right through the block. There's no way to know that's coming.
And you didn't call me and ask me why that broke.
No, because I knew you wouldn't have any more answers than I did. I don't know why it broke. And why did it break then? Why then? There was like zero load on it. It was hardly working. Right. It wasn't hot. Why did it break right then?
Well, it remembers every time it was gouged on its entire life.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had a guy with an N14 and a mechanic was pulling the head off and pulled the exhaust pipe off. And he said, there's something wrong with your truck. And the owner said, what? He said, well, there's no soot and carbon in here. He said, it shouldn't be this clean. And the guy said, I run the max mileage Dearborn catalyst. And the mechanic he just couldn't get over that. So anyway, Doug Weber, Columbus, Ohio, T680, 10-speed, 325 rears, low pro 22.5 tires, ISX 2013, full emissions. He runs dry van, averages 20-some thousand pounds in the box, Columbus, Ohio to New Jersey. So I-70 to New Stanton and the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And then he has to go to North Jersey, and then he comes back with a little bit heavier load. he does the Kevin Rutherford speed. He tries to stay right around 60. At 60 miles an hour, he's at 1,250 RPM, 3 pounds of boost.
Wow.
He's running the max mileage catalyst and the mileage improver. He's just under 9 miles per gallon for
Outstanding.
his 30-day average. And he keeps at a 3 pound of boost when he can, of course.
Right.
You know, Pennsylvania Turnpike certainly doesn't have a lot of level, and neither does I-70 from Columbus to New Stanton.
No, they don't.
But there's a case in point. He leaves early, and he said he has plenty of time. It's 470 miles out and 560 back. But here's one when he's bobtailing, 13.3 mile per gallon.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. Nice.
and at the 57 mile an hour.
There you
Every
go.
time I hear 57, 58, I think of you, Kevin. Every time I hear that. So I said, well, that's a KR speed right there.
Yeah,
And,
you know that
13 speed. But
that wasn't random. That number happened because of that truck I bought from Swift. Back in the early 90s, Swift had all their trucks governed at 57. They were governed there. That was
Wow.
it. That was as fast as that truck would go. And I bought it thinking I could turn it up. You couldn't. That thing was so gear bound, and there wasn't much left to turn up on that thing. So I just left it there. And when I bought it, I was in Ohio anyway with the 55 mile an hour speed limit. And if you did 60 in Ohio, you were eventually going to get a ticket at 60. They would write them all day long. So I just left it at 57, and I stopped getting tickets. I used to get, when I first started driving, I would get one speeding ticket a year, it seemed like. And I got that truck, and it was set at 57, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to leave it there. And I left it there, and then they changed the speed limit, and then I moved down to Florida, and speed limits kept getting faster, and I just left it at 57 because that's about all that truck had. The way it was spec'd, you couldn't get much more out of it. And it was the first truck that just got outstanding fuel economy. I mean, in the early 90s, every other truck I had was getting 5 or 5.5. And all of a sudden, that got 7. And that was what got me interested in fuel economy because I saw all the savings. You know, I had 3 trucks at the time, and I'm like, why am I spending all this money on fuel on these 2 trucks, but not on this one?
so you're a product of Swift.
Can you believe that? Yeah, Swift taught me about fuel economy. First time.
Wow.
You know, the other, that
You know,
may
back
have
then-
been, that may have been one of the best purchases of a truck I ever made. So this was a white Volvo. This was early 90s. I think it was a 1990. And I think I bought it in 91. Swift bought, it was a single axle sleeper, which was a really unusual truck, and I wanted it because I was pulling doubles. They bought a bunch of these because they had a contract in Arizona somewhere pulling doubles. Well, right after they ordered all these trucks and got them in, that contract got canceled. And they put all these up for sale. I bought it, it had 30,000 miles on it. And I got this thing for like $72,000. It was just an incredible buy. And it turned out to just be an amazing truck. That had the 11-liter. That was my first 11-liter. And it was just an amazing truck.
Wow. Okay. So this goes to show if you drive by the boost gauge, you use the catalyst and the mileage improver. By the way, we're going to try to incorporate both of those together and still keep it at 1 ounce to 25 gallon. Dr. Jane's out of the country right now. And as soon as she gets back in another week, we're going to be working on that. That's our next project.
All right. All right. Well, one quick thing, totally off topic. I might have mentioned this to you last week. Did you see the new water sport? Did I mention this to you last week?
You'd mentioned it.
Yeah. Wing foiling.
Yes.
Yeah. So I went and
I've seen it in the boat magazine.
I went and bought all the equipment. I started to learn how to fly
And
the
are you
wing
doing
yesterday.
it?
Well, I started to learn how to fly the wing yesterday. They say you should spend as much time on land as possible learning how to fly the wing before you try to get it in the water on the board, because then you're dealing with the foil. I'll probably play around tomorrow. I think we're going to get good wind on a stand-up paddleboard. So I'll get out in the water with the paddleboard and I'll play around with the wing and then try the foil.
What is your water temperature there in the Columbia?
I have no idea. I don't know what it is.
Are you full wetsuit?
This time of year, you wouldn't have to. I will. I'll wear, well, I've got a short sleeve that I'll wear a summer wetsuit. And I'll wear an impact vest, too, because I have a feeling there's going to be some pretty spectacular crashes with that foil.
You're going to be bouncing your chest off the front of the board.
Yeah, so I think I'll wear the impact and the water and everything else, but I think I'll wear that.
Next week, if you're talking like this, we'll know you have broken ribs.
You'll know why. That's right. Yeah, I mean, it looks like a lot of fun. We just, yesterday, when I put it all together and took it out, we just had horrible wind. We had an east wind, which is really bad because the river's flowing west. So if you get an east wind blowing west, it's really difficult because you're just fighting not to go downstream all day. So the conditions here, most of the summer, the river's flowing one way and the wind's blowing the other, which is perfect because then you get the big waves, and that's what everybody wants. Although with the foil, it doesn't really matter because your board doesn't touch the water.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've
seen them in the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah, that's it's really catching on quick here. You know, the other thing that I saw that's kind of crazy, the board and the foil is like the new thing. So people are using that with a kite. They're doing the foils with all kinds of things. I see surfers now are using them. So they've got surfboards with a foil on them, and you ride a wave just like you do on a normal surfboard, except the board comes up out of the water or rides on the foil.
You should take the week and go to Aruba.
Yeah.
And in Aruba, they do it. They did a lot of that windsurfing when I was there. I'm sure they're doing the wings with the hydrofoil now, because they have this perfect wind all the time in those bays down there.
Yeah, we have really good wind here. It's just it's more difficult. It's not that real nice steady wind you get on the oceans. We get crazy gusty winds, so it's a little more difficult. The other thing I saw that's pretty crazy, I saw a board with a foil and an electric motor and a prop.
Wow.
Yeah, the board, it's self-powered and you have a remote in your hand. That board was
okay.
Yeah.
But no foil.
No. Yeah. The foil is, is confusing. The foil is what's under the board. The wing is what you hold in your hand. So there's
I'm
wing.
talking about the wing.
Yeah. No wing. Right. Yeah, you just stand on the board with nothing. And you've got a remote in your hand, and it's got its own motor and prop.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
A lot of things. A lot of water.
$8,000 for that board, though.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a...
I've only seen videos of it. I haven't seen it in real life.
Well, I'm thinking today I don't think we're going to have any kind of wind at all. It's not looking like it. But tomorrow I think we're supposed to get a good, strong west wind. So I think tomorrow's going to be my inaugural flight. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
All
Has
right.
Leroy been on yet?
Leroy has not been on yet. I'm going to come back to Leroy here in a little bit. Pete and Leroy were having some issues with the internet, and they were on phones. Now they're reconnected. So, but we're about to hear from a special guest today. David Counts is with us.
Good.
Yeah, so we're going to bring David in right now because he's next up on the board. David, welcome back.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? How you guys doing?
Good. We haven't heard from you in a while. What have you been up to?
Oh, man, just working on filters. I've got a lot of new stuff we got going on, and we've actually decided we would 3D print some model stuff, and
really
makes it a little quicker for us. It's a lot faster, as far as CNC in it. Of course, it's not a production piece; it's just a piece that we can put in and prototype it.
Right.
it happens. You can do that within, hours of drawing it, versus a day or two.
Okay.
So anything to make it simpler and try
That's
to get
right.
more product out and new pieces. So, I was sitting here listening to you a while ago, and so I decided I would Google this board you're talking about.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, it's crazy.
And
You're going to have video of this, so you know that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt. So, when I first moved here, the kiteboarding thing is huge here. It was invented right here in front of me on the river here. And I started playing around with it. I don't get along with all those ropes. I swear, I just get tangled up in everything. I don't know what it is with me and ropes and lines. And I got thinking about it. I'm like, this probably isn't a good idea for me. So I played around with it a little bit, and then I thought, nah. Plus, you got to have the right spot to launch the kite, and trying to recover the kite. It's really pretty hard to do by yourself. So when I saw this wing, I'm like, well, that solves all the problems of all the ropes and trying to launch, and you just grab a hold of this wing and you hold it yourself.
Yeah, I was sitting there looking at it. I've seen this in Gulf Shores. I mean, we live on the coast, so
right.
I've actually seen this done, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's very, very smooth.
That's the thing.
No matter how rough, once the board's out of the water, and I guess you're on the foil, is what that would be?
The foil,
yep. It's very smooth, You're not bouncing around any at all.
No, and it's like you would imagine, like racing and everything else these days. It's so technical. That foil, the shape and the size of the front foil and the back foil, you've got two of them. And I was trying to figure it all out when I was in the storm. Just like, just give me a foil. I just got to go get started. Then I'll figure all this stuff out. But you can get crazy with different foil. Almost everybody, if you're really into this, you're probably going to have 3 different wings based on wind. Like I bought a 4.5 meter wing, but I'll probably at some point get a 6 meter for really light wind days, and then maybe a 3 or a 3.5 for when the wind's really strong. And then you can get different size boards and different size, foils with different lift, and it gets pretty crazy when you start putting it all together, but it looks like a lot of fun.
It does.
So
it really does.
The interesting thing, this foil is not new. When I go back I grew up water skiing and, did a ton of this and then switched to wakeboard later on when the wakeboards got popular. But there was a time where they were doing this thing at SeaWorld, and there was actually a SeaWorld in Ohio where I lived. And in their water ski show, they had this thing called an air chair, and you would sit in it like a chair, and that foil was underneath this chair. So you would sit in the chair and strap yourself in, which doesn't sound like a good idea to me. And then you could use that foil to do all kinds of tricks, because you could dive and then shoot it out of the water. So I saw it at SeaWorld, and then one day I'm out at the lake and somebody had one. So I got a chance to try it. But man, the crashes on that were just awful because you're strapped in. When you crash, it's like, it was just ugly.
Can't get away from it.
Yeah,
it just keeps you with it. So.
Yeah, that was kind of a mess. So this looks like, I got thinking, I spent a ton of money on equipment. It's not cheap, but I got thinking, I used to have to buy a boat, which was really expensive, and then you had to put gas in the boat, then you had to fix the boat, then you had to trailer it back and forth all the time. Now, once I bought the equipment, I'm kind of done. I can go do this as much as I want. It doesn't cost me anything now.
Well, you know the old saying about a boat, right? It's nothing but a hole in the water.
That you throw money into. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly right.
Right, Bruce?
I have one. Bruce can vouch for that, too.
That's right.
Yeah, but I just sold my ski nautique this week, and I haven't used it for 6 years because I'm not doing skiing. But it's sad. I hate to see them go. I mean, I love boats, trucks, motorcycles, snowmobiles, cars, and it's got an engine in it. And you got to love it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's me. I'm all about racing. I mean, I'm still racing today as hard as I've ever been. So
yeah,
and don't know when I'll give it up.
All right. So, David, what's the latest filter you're working on?
Oh, actually, I'm working on one that's, let me see what number that is. I reference them all those numbers now. It's actually for the F650. I know that's a small truck, but we have so many calls for that filter. It's just unbelievable. So we actually made a new one. I actually have it in the truck today as we speak. We're running it, seeing what it's going to do. And my philosophy, if just because they make a filter or just because we make one, if it doesn't work, I won't produce it. I mean, if I can't see at least 2 to 3 tenths out of it, then
right.
I usually just bail out because I can't help it at that point, and there's no use to be making it at that point. So. But I guess that's probably our newest one we got out. Of course, the 2599, that's for the international. Those seem to be a pretty hot topic, but that's one that we're having to have cores, and we build our pieces on the top side, then we use the bottom core section of that filter. I'm actually working on where we won't have to do that. Most people send the cores back to us, but we have a few that's not interested in it. So if you have them and you want one, we have those available. We keep probably a couple dozen of those in stock all the time. I think Bruce has even got a couple of them. So.
Good. All right. So, I got thinking there had to be a time, probably a long time, where there were only a couple filter models for all the trucks. They were all round. They were all about the same. That certainly changed these days, hasn't it?
Oh, my God, has it? I mean, I'm seeing a lot of the round filters come back in some trucks.
Well, good.
Versus, the longer filters that we make, like the 6127 and stuff like that, or square, you should say. I've noticed some round ones coming back. Those are fairly easy for me to build because I have so many different end caps. That makes it pretty simple.
Right.
The ones that are tough to build, like the 6127, that's more rectangled, those are specific only. And so those pieces I make only fit one truck.
Yeah.
So, I think right now we probably got 40-something different filters out.
Wow.
That we have in production.
Wow.
And some I have deleted over the past. I've deleted some out. And some I've brought back that, we did back in, 10 years ago. And,
right.
So it's crazy how that works. But, I guess every 7 years things change. So.
Well, Pete was talking earlier. He spends all of his time on the phone, and I can vouch for this. I spent a couple weeks there at their shop, and every time I went in to his office to talk to him, he was on the phone, and he was talking about big cam Cummins, mechanical engines. He spends all day long on big cams now. That's just crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, talking about Pete and all those guys, they're probably one of our largest stocking dealers that we have. So if we don't have it, we actually divert them to them.
Good.
And if they don't have it, then we figure nobody's probably got it.
That's right. That's right.
But you was talking earlier about just getting product and parts and pieces in. I mean, we're dealing with the same thing. We make all of our stuff from raw material,
right?
And just some of our raw materials is incredible to get. I mean,
that seems crazy.
We ordered. It does, and you would think it would be plentiful, but it's not. I mean, our aluminum blanks that I actually order it in 12-foot sticks, 12 inches wide, roughly is a good average size of it. But when we order it, I mean, I have places that won't sell me but like so many pieces.
Really? I see that.
Yes.
I guess I can understand when there's a shortage of a specific sensor and, or these specific parts, finished parts. I get all that because, any one disruption in the supply chain, some of these finished parts have so many pieces coming from different places. You can get that. But a raw material, why are we having shortages of raw materials? That doesn't even make sense to me.
No, like here, I'm on the Gulf Coast, so all of our industry around us revolves around shipbuilding.
Right.
So, and a lot of the new ships a lot of them's aluminum. So we buy from the same place that the shipbuilder buys from.
Yeah.
So if you don't allot how much you're going to use at the first of the year to the steel company or aluminum or company or whatever, if you don't allot to them, when it comes time for you to order, and just say you allotted 100 pieces. Well, just say I use 100 pieces 6 months into my year.
Yeah.
Well, getting another 100 is tough to do because I didn't allot that at the first of the year.
Okay. Wow. So has this ever been a problem before?
No, it's never been a problem.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
It's new. No, and it's, the aluminum, 1 month is way up, the next month is way down. So you can't even take an average. I mean, I order $50,000 of aluminum a month, and used to they would come in a semi, and we'd spend an hour to a half hour unloading it. Now they come in, and $50,000 worth of aluminum is not very much. I mean, so it takes 2 scoops of the forklift, and you're empty.
Yeah, that's not good.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah,
but
man,
we try to keep up with it. Everything that's done at the Mobile store, it's pretty easy for me to handle.
Yeah.
But everything that's done in Indiana, it's a little tougher because I'm not there all the time.
Right.
But, for some breaking news, I am, hopefully before the year's out, we're going to move that plant to Mobile.
Oh, are you?
So
okay.
Everything's going to be Yeah, we've been planning this for probably the last year or so. Roger, my partner in it, he's getting older, so he's like wanting to retire, I guess.
Slow down a bit.
Like I was telling him.
Got it.
He does, and look, he deserves it. I mean,
he does.
He really does.
Yeah.
It's time probably to move it all to Mobile and get it here and work on new pieces.
There you go. All right, so we're going to hear from Leroy. Phone lines are really starting to pile up, so we're going to have to get to some calls here. If you have any questions about Fleet Air Filters, today's the day. We've got the guy here, so pick up the phone and call us, 855-950-3835. So, Leroy, we saved the best for last today. What's on your mind?
Oh, not too much. Anyway, so I'll try to keep it short, but I had an interesting but sad story this week. I had a guy with a Select Plus engine inside of a truck that originally had a Select engine. And there was a mismatch between the ECM and the engine. And if you look at the side of the engine, you look for a Select Plus ECM. And according to the part number on the side of it, it says it's a Select Plus. So to kind of go back and recap, Select Plus ECMs have to go with Select Plus engines, and Select ECMs have to go with Select engines. You can't mix and match them.
Okay.
So we were looking through this, and this truck runs poorly, has weird electrical issues, and check engine lights that it shouldn't have. So we started going down through the troubleshooting tree for the Select side of it. And we sort of noticed, hey, we're doing troubleshooting for a Select. We're like, well, this is supposed to be a Select Plus. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I look at the part number. The part numbers for a Select Plus, I kind of have them memorized.
Right.
Well, make a long story short, this guy had an engine. It blew up. He put a Select Plus in there. And in order to get this to run correctly, you have to, like I said, get a Select Plus ECM for it.
Yeah.
So this guy went online and bought one from a certain place that remanufactures in Texas. I hate to talk bad about any company, but I get a lot of bad stories from them. Anyway, what they did was they took the guts of a Select ECM and put a Select Plus case on it.
No way.
So it would be like if you bought a and you popped the hood and it had an engine.
Oh, man.
I'm like, I didn't see it at first, and I should have, because none of the connectors would have bolted up or anything. I was like, I don't understand. It looked like a fairly nice swap. I didn't know what was going on, but yeah, so they kind of, screwed that guy out of a bunch of money, because now he has to buy an ECM.
Yeah.
They're $3,000 plus, and you have to buy harnesses, and who knows how much they are, but they probably have a comp. and then all the labor that's going to take to rewire the whole thing. So the problem was in the beginning when the Select engine blew up, they should have either swapped everything or they should have put a Select engine back in it. Really, the root of all this guy's problems is somebody just was like, "Oh, I found another N14. I'll just put this one in there."
Yeah,
and that's for just not knowing what you're working with specifically just gets you in all sorts of trouble.
Yeah. So since
I want to add. I want to add to that story, too, because I took the initial phone call.
Go ahead, Bruce.
The guy's son called me. This fellow's 74 years old. Been in trucking his entire life. His son called me and said, my dad had you guys do a remote tune, and we're not really happy with it. They live north of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I said, well, my God, when you're that close, bring it in. Let's put it on the dyno. And they told me that they had put a different block in it. And I said, well, if you have a power issue, we need to check and see where the timing is. So we need to pull an injector and pull a rocker box and put the timing tool in it. And then we need to pull the accessory drive pulley off and pull the plug out and look in to make sure that the dots and the dashes are lined up. That's the cam gear to the accessory drive gear, because you set the overhead off the accessory drive pulley. And if they didn't line stuff up, then you can't set the overhead, and we don't know where the timing was. So the father called me the next day and said, man, that's going to be about $1,700. And I said, well, I mean, if you're having issues. So he said, I don't want to spend that kind of money. I said, well, look, $425, bring it in and put it on the dyno. We'll do the pressure test the intake system like we always do. And it had a massive leak. Leroy, what was leaking?
Not sure on that one.
Mounting, yeah. Intake manifold mounting.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, they were not on correct.
So that means the people that built the engine didn't put that on correctly. The 3 gaskets, I mean, it's not rocket scientists to do that. So now Leroy finds this electrical issue, and I quoted this guy, $425. It will not be more than $425. You'll be here about 2 hours. And now here's where the problems start, because of all these hack jobs and all these other shops that really don't know what they're doing. They really don't take the time to study things, and they start mismatching parts like Select Plus with Select and all big cams. My God, they'll mismatch big cams. And then they'll do it with Caterpillar. They'll do it with 34.6Es with C15s. And this becomes a problem when we're trying to help people over the telephone, and you got to have a quoted price. And then it comes in and we find a catastrophe. So.
Yeah. So, Bruce, over the
years... you can hear it in my voice that I get a little excited on that stuff. So.
Yeah, I know. So, you and I have talked about this over the years, and you've told me about projects where you're swapping engines out, and even times where the engines seem really, really similar. The one that comes to mind, Al Hemerson's 14-liter non-emission for a 14-liter emission, or I think it was the other way around. It was the same engine.
Right.
It was the same engine. There's some electronic differences. And when you told me the nightmare trying to get that thing done and how much work, and here's a case where, I mean, when you think of a Select or a Select Plus, it sounds like the same engine. They're almost identical. And yet, look at all the problems. So every time I see online and somebody says, man, I'm just tired of dealing with this engine, I'm going to yank it out and put this in instead, I think, oh, you should just get rid of that truck and go find a truck with the engine you want. Swapping engines today seems like just a real big mistake.
Right. On the Al Hemerson deal, Al's a great mechanic. He's a really sharp guy, and he's great with his hands, and he's very smart. And Al and our mechanic, who worked for corporate Detroit at the time, those 2 guys worked 8 hours a day each, so 16 hours a day for 3 solid weeks.
Yeah.
And it was $20,000 in labor and some parts to make that conversion. And that's not charging for Al's time. I mean, Al donated his own time to his truck. So.
Yeah. And that's the block, everything was virtually identical. One was emissions, one wasn't. And 3 weeks, 2 really good qualified people. That's crazy. I mean, that's just, yeah. And we see that a lot. So one other thing, David, since you're on the phone here, because I always thought this was hilarious. We're talking about the fact that if you're going to put another engine in a truck, it better be, damn close to what you took out. It should be identical. So when I was down at David's place, we were working on our trailer back then, and I was working on the tractor, and then I threw the rod, and I'm scrambling to try to find an engine. We had the CMC coming up, and we're standing there. Remember, we're all standing in the shop, and we're talking about where am I going to find an engine, and this guy walks up, and David, he was a friend of yours. I don't know if you're going to remember this or not. Was he from Mississippi, maybe? I think he was. And he walks up and
he was from Louisiana.
Okay, so he walks up and we're standing there talking about where am I going to find an engine, and here's what he says. He said, "Oh, I've got a friend and he's got some trucks and I know he's got an engine for sale." And you could tell this guy didn't know a lot about trucks. He just said, it's a truck and he's got an engine for sale. And I'm thinking, okay, what are the odds, that this random guy who just walked up and said, my friend has an engine for sale, what are the odds that it's going to be the right engine? So we call the guy, sure enough, perfect 12.7, exactly what I was looking for. What are the odds?
I remember that.
Wasn't that crazy?
That was crazy. You was talking about, you guys were talking about fatigue earlier, and when Kevin was pulling in our driveway, I was out front, and I witnessed that motor doing what it done. He was on the deacceleration side, and it hung a rod out the side, but it snapped the rod. The rod literally broke right above the crank journal, is where it broke at.
Yeah.
And it never hurt the bearing in it. Remember that?
What? The engine was still running just fine.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah,
but I'll never forget that. I mean,
yeah, it was
I still have the white Freightliner.
Oh, do you really? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still running daily.
Yeah, that was the truck I was talking about. That was the first truck that had all the crazy. Kind of autonomous stuff on it, the radar and all that stuff. That was quite a project truck when I built that one. But, yeah, I still remember that guy walking up saying, I've got a friend, and I think he's got a truck, and he's got that engine. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. We call him, and it's exactly what I'm looking for. And it was a hell of a deal. Somebody, remember the story behind that engine? Bruce, somebody did they do an out-of-frame? Maybe they did an in-frame on it. They did a full in-frame. I think they replaced the bull gear, and then they ran it. They brought it back, and they went to change the oil, just like we always say, just go run it one time, get that oil out of there. And when they drained the oil, they found a bunch of metal parts, like big parts, and then decided that something must have been wrong with the engine, and they just let it sit there. So I bought it, and I said, look, if it's tore up, I'm not paying this for it, but I'll buy it. I'll bring it here. We'll look at it. If everything's fine, I'll pay you what you want for it. And it wasn't much for having a new in-frame on it. We couldn't find anything wrong with it. I don't know where the metal came from when they drained the oil out, but we couldn't find anything wrong with it. As far as I know, I sold that truck to one of my listeners, and it wasn't that long ago. I heard from him. He's still using it.
Wow. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah, me too. It's kind of a crazy time.
That was it.
Do you guys have any knowledge on radiator caps? I don't want to change the subject, but it just came to me. Radiator caps, how often should they be changed, and the different problems they create?
Well, talking about a radiator cap, I'm going to give you a good scenario on a Hino. That's a really low pressure cap. And those things we change, I got 3 of the Hinos, and I change them out once a year because the caps do go bad.
Probably not a bad practice if you have one of those that go bad.
on an insert that's been singled. It's got 1,385,000. Does 10,000 mile oil changes. His oil analysis are phenomenally clean, but he was blowing some coolant, and we had him change the radiator cap, and the problem seems to be fixed. I know years ago I had a 61 Corvette, and I couldn't get heat out of the radiator, and it was the radiator cap. So it's something that's very economical, something we always overlook, but there's probably a life, whether it's 3, 4, 5 years, 500,000 miles, that you should change a radiator cap because of the problems it can create.
You know, it seems to me, Bruce, that we used to talk about those problems a lot more. That used to be a fairly common thing. Somebody would call their, pressurizing or the overheating or whatever. And we even used to say, have you changed the cap? I mean, we used to just ask as a general question if there was coolant or heating issues. We would ask, did you change the cap? We don't do that much anymore. We probably should.
It's back to the basics, right?
Yeah, that's right. All right, speaking of the basics, the phone calls are piling up, so we're going to jump into them right now. We're going to get started in Pennsylvania. Charlie, welcome to the program.
Good morning, gentlemen. I sent you an oil sample, Kevin.
All right, let me take a look. What do we got going on here?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So I'm not really seeing anything to be too... What are you concerned about on this?
Why was it? The last oil sample was 52 on the lead, and this oil sample is 6 on the lead. And I didn't change anything.
Yeah. What was going on?
What's the possibility? I've got it's called filter clean bypass filter on there. The filter sets on top of where I check the oil. What's the chance of a buildup being in there and it all of a sudden came out? But I also pulled the oil sample this time from the port on the front cover instead of out from the bypass filter.
So you know what I think I'm seeing
possibilities
here? You know what I think I'm seeing here? Because I went back and looked historically. It's nice when you have a lot of samples to go back and look at. Back in December of 21, you had a real high lead number at 67. Then it went from 67 to dropped to 17 by March. That was a lower
which
oil
I
sample.
changed I changed the rods and mains in February the 16th.
Here's what I see happening. When you ran your oil to 40,000 miles, you ended up with high lead at 67. The next one you changed or sampled at 15,000. So less than half, and you had 17. Then you were at 15,000 again, and you were at 10. Then you went to 34,000 on your sample, and you were at 52 again. So you're seeing these elevated numbers every time you push your sampling out. You're pushing it out more than double, and you're seeing the elevated number. But the other thing I'm looking at, we're at an engine with... Oh, wait a minute, this is confusing. How did you have 1 point?
Yeah, it is. I don't know why they did. I don't know where that 1.5 came from.
Okay, so
because that engine's only
just over
got
a million.
1,087,000.
Okay, so
I think on it now since the initial rebuild.
I think what you're seeing here.
But when I had that 67, now Bruce goes back on the emails to February the 18th. I changed the main and rod bearings, and they had to polish the number 5.
So So
It actually needed rods and mains when I did it that time.
here's what I think is happening, and Bruce, Pete, David, anybody jump in with your thoughts. So we had high lead when he extended his drains and his samples out. But even when he was doing 14,000 mile samples, when you have lead at 17 and 10, that's high. I mean, we shouldn't see that kind of lead. I'm thinking, here's my thought, that we got to 1 million miles or darn close to it. You were at 970 some when you had the bearing issue the first time. The engine's up there miles. We're starting to get wear. You put new bearings in it. I have a feeling we either have a bent crank or the blocks, out of alignment, and we're just wearing the bearings again. Anybody have any thoughts?
Okay.
Now, I agree, Kevin, and it's something we had talked about before. At this point, it's got to be a line bore issue or a bent crank. And I also think we talked about his, I think he had a picture of his bearings. I think he sent it to Bruce, them in order, and then look at the wear pattern. If the old ones were worn uneven, then that's a sure sign that we have a line bore or bent crank issue.
Yeah, I think that's what we've got here, because there's nothing about the oil that would cause excessive wear metals. There's nothing wrong with the oil. The oil's in perfect condition. There's no reason we should have these excessive wear metals, except something is wearing more than it should. And with the bearings, it's going to be the crank or the line bore. I just think we're getting near the end of the life on this thing. It probably, if you were going to keep this one, it probably needs an auto frame.
Remember, Nick Carter had that at the last CMC on that new glider. He was going through bearings, I think, in 228,000 miles.
Right. I think that's what you're seeing here. I mean, we have we have right at about 10,000 is all we've got, or 10,000 or 100,000. Right at about 100,000. But these bearings are wearing again.
Okay. Because I've got, I think it's about 12,000 more miles and I'll pull another sample. What I'm thinking is there's buildup that I've never done. Bypass systems been on there for 5 years. I've never took it back off and cleaned it. And the
Charlie,
samples that I was pulling was coming from the bottom of it.
Yeah, I think you're barking up the wrong tree here. I think if you think this is a filter problem, I think you're going to be shocked when you find out you need a set of bearings again. I don't think it's a filter problem. I've never seen a filter that builds up stuff in it. I'm not as familiar with the filter you're using, but that just doesn't make sense to me. There shouldn't be any place where we're building up wear metals. If there are, I'd get rid of that filter because it's giving you incorrect readings then on our oil sample. That's not good.
That's why I pulled it from a different place on the motor this time. Instead of pulling it from the bottom part of the bypass filter like I have been, it's got about a 3-inch long by 1/4-inch tube that the oil comes out of to get to my sample bottle. I pulled it right off of the front cover because this motor has a little push valve on it that you can check it right at the front cover. And that's where this last sample came from.
So I guess at this point, there's not
because
much.
The soot even came down.
Yeah, there's not much to do at this point except keep an eye on it. And maybe keep taking your sample from this other place if you think that may be an issue. At some point, if this stops and you don't see more lead and we never see copper, then I guess you're going to be fine. If you keep wearing lead, at some point we're going to see copper. I think you've got an issue here that is causing bearing wear, but at this point, all you can really do is wait and see.
Yeah, well, I'll run another 12,000 for another one because
Now,
if it's a bearing issue, they're under warranty through Detroit, and Detroit put them in.
well, then here's what I would do if I were you. If this could potentially be a bearing issue or a warranty issue on the bearings, you need to be talking to them right now, because they are going to have, Pete, you could probably jump in on this. They're probably going to have very strict criteria on what you have to do to prove that warranty claim, and you need to start on that now.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Okay.
if a line would be covered under warranty.
Yeah,
I think if it was inflation issues, they would cover it. Defective bearing, they would cover it. I think if it's a line board, I don't think they're going to cover that.
or a bent crank. They're going to say our bearing didn't fail and our installation didn't fail. You have another problem causing this wear.
Okay.
It's worth a phone call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pete, what do they set the crank thrust on those things at, on those motors?
You know, I don't know on the Detroits.
And this is a
I
14
never built
liter.
one myself.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I don't know what it would be.
All right, Charlie, keep us informed. All you can really do on this one is keep an eye on it, and let's just see what happens with that wear. Let's, calls are piling up. Let's go to Pennsylvania. Wade, welcome to the program.
Hey, guys. Good to talk to you. Just got a few questions here. Last Monday, I took delivery, company driver, took delivery of a new Kenworth T680 Next Gen with the X15. I think it's the 505 horsepower. Just have a few questions, mainly probably all for Leroy. It's got a few quirky things about it that are different than the truck I came out of. I came out of a CM2250 in a T660. So the Jake brake doesn't seem to come on at all on the cruise control. If it does, I haven't let it get high enough above the cruise speed. Is that something that can be adjusted?
Yeah, you can have it set to come on with the cruise and at what speed, and yeah, that's all customizable.
Okay, and this also has a 12-speed Eaton Endurance, and the Jake brake doesn't work. Like, it works in 12th, 11th, 10th, and then sometimes it works in 9th, sometimes it doesn't. Is there a way to turn on which gears it works on and which it doesn't?
I would have to see why it's turning on certain gears and whatnot. That sounds like some sort of strategy with the transmission, but that really shouldn't have too much to do with it, because if you want the Jake brake, you should be allowed to have it. So, again, I think
right.
Setting.
Yeah, the Cummins Jake brake seems to be pretty abusive on the drive line in the really low gears, like I'd say in the low range. But it seems like if I start Jake braking in 10th gear and go to 9th, it'll work. But if I start in 12th and want to go all the way down to 9th, it won't work in 9th. It won't work. I've never seen it work in 7th, 6th, 7th, and 8th so far. But I've only got 2,800 miles on the truck so far.
Yeah. Yeah, it mostly sounds like the configuration.
Okay. Just a real quick question. I've thought about this for a while, never wanted to call in about it. But if someone were to get set up as a remote tuner with you, I work daytime, and typically I'm off like 5 or 6 p.m. Do you guys do anything? Is there any way for a remote tuner to actually function if I were doing stuff like after 6 p.m.?
Yeah, so we typically work 7 to 7, sometimes till 8, 7 days a week. So in your situation, you could do a little bit after 5, 7 o'clock, or if you wanted to, you could do it on the weekends. But, something like 8, 9 o'clock or 9, 10 o'clock, yeah, I'm probably not going to do that. But like I said, usually it's 7 to 7, 7 days a week.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know for the weekends, too. I wasn't even figuring on the weekends, but I didn't know. I wasn't really sure how you guys worked that, if you sent the files over and then I went out and did it, or you had to be in the office or at least be able to access your laptop.
Yeah, as long as we have access to our laptop, we can kind of just work around your schedule and up to whatever. We prefer to be hooked to it. That way we can catch any sort of issues, not just send a file over. For instance, if we hook up to it and see some sort of check engine light or sensor not reading right, like, hey, we're not going to tune this until this is fixed first.
Okay.
Or a good case is if we log into something and we see it has 200 counts being overheated, yeah, we're not going to put a tune in it because it's on its way out. So that's why, yeah, as long as we're around, we'll hook up to it and, do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, and what, Bruce or Leroy, what kind of startup cost is there involved in that? And would you consider a guy in my position? I'm a company driver. I don't have a shop. I don't have anything. Just really interested in trucks. Kind of a gearhead, but not any kind of trained mechanic.
As far as startup costs, I think the laptop. I'm actually not sure. I think it's around $2,000. That includes the laptop, data link, the software.
$28.50.
Oh, $28.50.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not.
Bruce,
really
what did you say the startup cost for the Catalyst is? Between $5,000 and $6,000.
$5,100.
Okay.
To become a dealer. But to become a dealer, it's best if you had a shop and you had a place where people can pull in with their truck. And it's not working very well for people doing it from home. It works best for shops.
Okay. But the remote tuning would be a little more flexible in that particular issue.
Right.
I have a truck stop about a mile from my house, so that wouldn't typically be an issue.
Yeah, no, we work with a lot of, guys like you. You're just drivers. You don't have a shop. They don't do too much stuff, but they kind of do it here and there. Yeah, I don't see a problem with it. As long as you're not in any sort of area that you're like stepping on somebody else's toes, that would be the only thing that we would say no.
Okay. Yeah, I live. You just mentioned somebody probably not far from me. I live about 45 miles northeast of Harrisburg, so not probably kind of close to that previous guy. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all I had for today.
All right. Thanks for the call. We're going to head off this time to Florida. Raymond, welcome to the program.
Good morning. On the pyrometer thing, mine runs 1,200 degrees. So I got the one inside the manifold. The sensor is right in the manifold. It'll go up 12. Right now it's running, 7. It runs 700 to 800 all the time, but going up the hill, it'll go up 1,200 pretty quick, and that's where I back off at.
Well, that's where you want to be, is 1,200 degrees when your thermocouple is in the exhaust manifold. That's considered the hot side. And what engine is it? What engine do you have?
ISX 15, yeah.
And you can take an engine like that up to as high as 1,500. You just don't want to sustain it there. But 1,200 is really conservative, so you're okay.
Okay, man. I appreciate the info there.
Yeah, our cutoff point on the aluminum piston engines was 1,200, but on the steel top pistons, it can go much higher.
Okay, cool. Isn't it amazing how that $5 sign over the fuel pump makes that right foot get lighter?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'm the LTL produce guy. I called in about 6 months ago. So I couldn't afford to go less than 75. Right now I'm running 63. So.
That's right. Conditions change. We better change with them.
When you have time, you slow up these days.
That's right.
I don't know about the average guy here though. I seem to be I'm with the prime drivers over here now. Everybody else still is passing me, so I don't know.
Well, some of those people think that
guys don't care anyway, right? So yeah.
Yeah, some of those people think the tougher things get, the faster they have to drive.
Yeah.
That's all right,
Yeah,
because
there's no
they'll.
question. This little truck, man, since I had it peaked and tender, whatever you call it, it'll be the first one on top of the hill if you want it to be. But that's not my goal. I don't care about that. I care about fuel mileage and how much. Really worry about being the first one top of the hill.
There you go. There you go. All right. We're going to keep rolling. The calls are piling up. We're going to head off to Kansas City. Ray, welcome to the program.
Hey, hello, you guys. I'm excited. I talked to Pete yesterday. Got the money sent out to have my 2007 Kenworth T600. Going to do an end frame and a front structure to it. And I've got just a few questions. I'm coming up about 4,000 more miles where I'm going to do my oil sample. I have the OPS on it. I'm going to go ahead and change the filters, but I've been having to add a lot of oil because blow by is getting worse. So I don't think I'm going to change the oil since we're looking at November to get this in the shop and rebuild it. Or do you think I should dump it and change it? Because this is going to be at about 75,000 miles. And that's where I've normally been changing it because the lead had come up a little bit. Every time I've been doing it once a year, which is about 75,000 miles for me. Oh, hello?
Anybody have any thoughts?
Yeah.
I mean, I would change oil. I mean, we don't want to take a chance at this point. If the lead's high, I mean, look at the oil analysis, but I mean, the oil is kind of...
Yeah, I'm going to send this.
We don't want to push the... Find out that issue or something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to send the sample off. It may be skewed because I've been adding oil, but I did just go ahead and put a gallon of the Lucas in. That seems to help a little thicker. The Lucas.
Oil are you adding?
I'm sorry?
How much oil are you adding?
Right now, I go 25,000 miles to the changing the filters and the OPS filter, and right now I'm at six gallons. It'll be 7 probably before I dump it.
And that would definitely affect the oil analysis because we're going to kind of water it down some.
Right. But I'll go ahead and do it because when I come out there, this will be my last bottle of I always order it from Kevin. Since I'm going to be out there in November, I could just get another five bottle set from you guys, correct?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I got a question for Kevin too, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Is there any advantages when I get this rebuilt? I've been using your profit gauges and fuel gauges for almost 8 years now. It's over 7 years. And would it be any advantage for I know it doesn't matter for the profit gauges. I'm not going to change that. But should I start over on the fuel gauges with a fresh rebuild?
No, I wouldn't. What you can do is just make a note in your account somewhere so that you remember the date, because anytime you want, you can go back and create a custom report. So I would just keep it going so we have continuity. I wouldn't want to start all over again. But just know that anytime...
Okay, yeah, great.
Yeah, anytime you want, you could go back and say, hey, let me run a report from the day we did the in-frame till now and compare it to prior. So, yeah, I would just leave it alone, keep doing what you're doing. Just make a note on when you did the in-frame.
Okay, and I know we can't change my odometer's never been right. Or when I got the truck, we know exactly how many miles was on it, but the dash cluster went out. And for some reason, it got set to 0, and when I bought it, it was at 101,000. But I know how many miles are on the truck. But do they make I know they make a GPS mileage deal for a phone, but I wouldn't want to use my phone because my phone doesn't stay in the truck. Do they make one that I can leave in the truck that specifically does mileage? Because GPS mileage is accurate.
They might, but you know what I've found, and I used to do this on almost all my trucks. It was simple, it was cheap, it was old school, but I used to just throw a hubometer on them. They were really accurate too. They lasted forever. I never had problems with them, and they were just simple.
Throw a what now?
Hubometer. Just bolt a little.
Yeah, I wondered the same thing.
Yeah.
Where do you get those at?
Any truck parts store, I would. Does anybody? I'm sure they still make these things, right? I haven't seen one in a long time. They are kind of old school, but they work really well. I imagine any parts store would have one.
What, pyrometers?
No, a hubometer.
No, hubometer.
Oh, hubometer. Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
So you just install it to the hub.
Yeah, it's just
we run them on our trucks.
Yeah, it's just you take off two nuts, you slide the brackets over, you put the nuts back on, and it just rides right there on your hub, and you just walk by and look at it.
I'll be damned. Okay.
David, did you say
they're pretty accurate,
you run them on your trucks?
Yeah, I still run them. I run them now.
I haven't seen them in a long time.
If I do something to it.
They're simple and they're accurate.
Yeah. Truck Pro has them.
Cool. So I can set it to 0 when I do the rebuild, and
yep,
there it'll be. Cool. I wonder if they have one that's GPS or that's Bluetooth now that'll have a readout for your inside of your truck.
Here's the thing, and here's why on some of this stuff I'd rather go old school. One, it's less complicated and they're accurate, but two, we have way too many devices in our cab already. The last thing I want is one more device fighting for my Bluetooth or my Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, when we looked at the scan gauge, and the scan gauge is old school, plugged in, it's not wireless, not Bluetooth, it's not Wi-Fi, and we thought about, why don't we just get rid of the hardware? Why don't we put a sending unit on, and you can send this to a phone app instead? And I thought the same thing. We've got too many devices in the cab already, too many things fighting for the signals. Let's just leave it simple and old school, and I think it works better.
Oh, you know what? The scan gauge, it reads the mileage from the
ECM.
ECM, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. There's a reading in there.
Right, and mine is off from the actual dash. It's off by like 108,000 miles. I don't know why, but it's just off. I think it's because they tried to make everything right when they put that cluster in before I bought the truck.
Yeah.
It was right before I bought the truck. But yeah, it's a shame you can't just reset that and start over.
Yeah, go old school. It's easier. Let's go to West Virginia. Randy, welcome to the program.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good. What can we help you with today?
Okay. Well, I took some notes so I wouldn't be sitting here babbling. Okay, one thing I wanted to tell you, long-time listener. Matter of fact, Kevin used to do my taxes years ago.
Really?
It's been. Yeah, and but of course I've been listening to you for years, and I fought hard against your fuel mileage stuff, and I finally had to come around to it somewhat. But I love my 379 Pete. Matter of fact, I took it to Uniontown, Pennsylvania this morning.
There you go.
And enjoyed driving.
There, good.
But a couple years ago, before the fuel went up, I started building me and about as far as I could go the other way was to go to a Freightliner 120 condo, and because I drove them years ago and with the Detroits, and I knew they did well on fuel. Well, with the help of Pittsburgh Power and there's some of their parts, I'm really doing well on fuel.
Good. Because
I've run off 68 quite a bit, and my Peterbilt was getting 5.1. And I measured this one multiple times now, and it does the same exact run at 7.3.
Nice.
And I'm really, really pleased.
Yeah,
and I was
that's
very
a lot of
fortunate.
savings today.
Owner-operated, a lot of savings, yeah. I was very fortunate. I found an owner-operator spec to 120, which are kind of rare. Most of them were freight trucks.
Right.
So I'm real happy with it. Got one little issue with it, and I can run that truck 700 miles, and it runs great out on the interstate stuff. But it's got a flutter in it, and I've heard many people on these forums having the exact same issues I've got. I heard people call into your show many times, exact same issues. And I did hear that, and this question for Bruce and Leroy, that they thought they might have a cure for this, but Bruce will know this more than most people. It's exactly like the old-timey micro switches would be bad on the Jake brake, and you would get the blue smoke. Like the road I live on, I come out at real light throttle, and that's usually when it does it, and a real light throttle. If I lug on a little bit, it won't do it. But it'll get that sputter, and if you leave it in that little sputter spot, it will actually backfire. And I've heard people on your show describe the exact same symptoms. I was really hoping for an answer, because here's what I've done. I've got reman injectors, injector wiring harness, TPS has been changed, the wiring to the TPS, both timing sensors, map sensor, a donor ECM, all these things, and nothing changes. It's exactly the same no matter what I do.
Any
you
thoughts?
guys still there?
Yeah, so I fixed a few. Yeah, I fixed a few now on those, and it's always because it switches into a timing offset that retards the timing by a whole bunch. And I can't remember. I think it's noise control BOI. I can't remember what sort of offset it is, but it's a timing chip.
But why would it do it with two different ECMs?
If they have the same calibration, the same software updates, then they'll both do it.
Yeah. They're pretty close, but one came out with KW, and mine, this one here, I had it sent back to Freightliner, and they reprogrammed it back to exact. Now, I do have the Pittsburgh Power Box on it, but it does it with or without it. It did it before I put it on, and it still does it.
I had stepped away from the phone. What engine is it?
12.7 Detroit.
12.7, okay.
It's got that same type of sputter, Bruce, that you and I, within no years from the old NTCs. I've been doing this 42 years. When that micro switch would get a little bit out of adjustment, and you'd have a little bit of fuel with your Jake brake. It's that exact same symptoms, but I don't think it's got anything to do with the Jake brakes, because you can just leave them off all day, and it'll always do it in the same particular spot coming out my little road to my house where I've got real light throttle. Sometimes it'll do it if I get in traffic and red lights and stuff, and I maintain the same little light throttle for too long of a distance. It will just die out and sputter, and you can either let up or you can accelerate a little bit, put a little bit of lug, get the turbo boost up, and you're back to good times again.
Pete, do you think it's sucking air?
It'd be easy enough to check, but no, I don't think so. But I mean, it's easy enough to roll that out, and then we don't have to look at that.
I've done that. I've checked for leaks in the air charge system.
No, sucking air in the fuel system.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Now, I did buy one of the sight glasses. I haven't, made up the proper connections. I need to hook that up. But there again, it doesn't do it anywhere out on the road. I mean, you can run on the interstate all day long. It'll never sputter. Just runs perfect. It's only this light acceleration.
I had a guy stop by. We talked on the radio. And then he came by.
Say that again.
And we went out. He got to do it every time, and I saw it on the laptop. Made adjustments to the calibration, and he called me a couple days later. Said it hasn't done it once, and I haven't heard from him again.
Well, it's this very morning. I'm on a forum for these guys, and this very morning, the same issue. I see it all the time. So it's not my issue. It's a issue with them. And I've heard many guys call in on your show describing the same exact symptoms that I'm experiencing.
This used to be one of our. This used to be one of our most common calls.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's always the 12
all the time. Yeah, and I had several of them that did this.
Oh yeah, yep. So what do I need to do? Bring this thing to you and let you run it, and see what if we can change the calibration in it and cure it.
Do you think we could simulate it on the dyno? Like throttle?
Oh yeah. It's just I can simulate it anytime I want. All I got to do is run it down the road at a real light acceleration for just maybe a quarter of a mile or something. If I don't move it, the throttle, and keep it real, it'll do it.
Okay,
but I've trained myself. I don't let it get in that.
Make an appointment with Leroy and get it in. Let's get it on the dyno and get all hooked up to it.
Yeah, that's the only thing I know to do. And I'll remind you when I get there. See, I'm not too far away here. I'll remind you when I get there, of our discussion. And one other thing, I've got your Pittsburgh box on it. I've got a pyrometer because I'm old school like Bruce. I like a boost gauge and a pyrometer and any gauge I can get. But I've got a digital pyrometer on there, and I don't think it's accurate. Do you guys have a probe that will go into my exhaust manifold that will hook up to your power box?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought you would. Okay. Well, I'll need to purchase one of them while I'm there. I've got a full flow manifold on this thing with the probe in the manifold. Yeah. And I know it's not accurate because 400 is the most I've ever got on it.
Oh wow! Yep, there's a problem.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, that's not an accurate data. And this truck pulls. We're talking about the little 12.7. It pulls better than my 550 Cat.
There you go.
I run it on stage 3 constantly. I never run it above stage 3, which I believe has got me about 575 horsepower. If I'm correct, Bruce.
What's the boost? Let's say 1800.
Yeah, the boost. I'm on your gauge. I'm somewhere around 40. My gauge will only go to 32, but on your Pittsburgh Power Box gauge, it'll go somewhere close to 42.
All right, so let's do a little calculation here. I'll have the answer in a second.
It's a factory tune 500. And I'm on stage 3, which, from I understand, your box takes me 25 per stage.
Yeah. So you're actually at 42 pound of boost, approaching 700 horsepower.
Well, it runs like it, but it shouldn't be at stage 3, should it?
It's the power box is seeing a lot of extra boost than when we first built it and what it was calibrated on. And it might be the manifold and turbo, because keep in mind when we built these 20 years ago now, we didn't have those manifolds and turbos available, and we worked with the stock wastegated turbo and stock manifold. And the box sees airflow, and it will give it more fuel. So you're getting a whole lot more power than what you're thinking you are.
Well, no wonder that pulls my 550.
Yeah,
but
we can make that 550 Cat now pull good too. So
yeah, no doubt. I just don't think I'm going to get the fuel mileage out of that 550 I'm getting with this Detroit, and I'm real happy with this Detroit.
There you go.
Well, Matt does very well with his cat with fuel mileage, but you're on 68, so 68's the hardest interstate in the United States. So
I completely agree. I've only been doing it 40 years across here. It was actually, when I started, it was 40 and then 48.
Yeah. 68 is the toughest one. That western part of Maryland is the toughest place by Westvaco Paper Company there. When I first called on them back in the days of the mechanical engines, sometimes they would lose an engine in 20,000 miles. Their drivers wouldn't let them warm up, and they'd flat put them up out of that valley. I mean, that's a brutal area.
Right up out of Luke, huh?
Mm-hmm. So,
all right, guys. I don't want to take up anybody else's time, but much appreciated.
All right, thanks.
Call
for the
Leroy
call.
and get in on that dyno.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
We'll get that done. Let's go to Pennsylvania. Gene, welcome to the program.
Hey, good afternoon, gentlemen. Hey, I heard you talking about that burping issue in that 12.7. I am the one that Leroy, you rode with me in my in that blue Volvo, and we got into it and fixed that, and that was exactly what was going on, and that's all there was to it. It has not done it since then. Actually, it's running fantastic. But it was what was that? A smoke control circuit, I think you called it.
I can't remember exactly what the offset modifier was for the timing, but it was something that made it go way retarded.
I think you said, the timing was off in something with one of the other control circuits in the ECM. But, as it said, it did it at low RPMs all the time. If you're going traffic light to traffic light, if you're around town, you run down the highway, it never acts up. It's only when you're in that in-town area you're accelerating up or you're going between traffic lights, and it would do it every time. Like you said, you could make it do it on demand. And I remember we drove back on 228 there back and forth a few times, and you adjusted it in, and I called you shortly after, said it's been fine, and it's still going fine. It's definitely, you got the solution to that. I put injectors into it. I put a wiring harness for the injectors. None of that fixed it until you got down there and hooked up on it.
Good.
Yeah, no, you don't even have to put it on. I know. We can just jump in the truck, go for a ride, make sure it doesn't, and then adjust the calibration, and it goes away. So
yeah, that's all we did, and that was the solution.
Yeah.
Fun. And while I got you on the line there, Kevin, did you ever get into that book that I give you to read through about electronics?
Yes, I'm learning. I go back to it occasionally and read, and I think I'm starting to get a better understanding. I don't have to guess as much anymore.
Right. It's a lot of intense information in there. That's why.
That's why I go back to it little bits at a time when I'm having problems or when I'm working on something electrical. Right. I'll go back, kind of skim through it, and it's helping. Thank you.
Yeah, it just helps things digest and set into place. And it's I've been working in electronics for the past 40 years.
Wow. Yeah.
But the version of that book is I started at Votech. I went to Lenape Votech up there in Fort City, and I started there in 11th grade and went through the military. I was an electrician. I was a high voltage electrician in the Air Force, and come out and used my GI Bill to get a degree at an electronic institute down by the Homestead High Level Bridge. I'm sure in Pittsburgh know about that.
Yep. Yeah. Good stuff.
That was Rosedale, wasn't it?
Yeah, Rosedale Tech and Electronic Institute. Correct.
Yeah, that's where Pat Sharp that builds our pumps and injectors went. It wasn't it, Pete?
Yep, Pat went there, and so did Brian.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, okay. Now, you said you went to Lenape. Are you from Ford City?
No, I live up in Dayton.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Hey, you guys come up through there in the bikes, and I've got the mobile catalyst. I sell on the highway, and I get into my Amish community.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now I know who I'm talking to.
Right.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. Good stuff. We got to keep rolling here. The calls just keep coming. Let's go to Louisiana. Brian, welcome to the program.
Hey, fellas. How's it going?
Good. What can we help you with today?
Yeah, I thought I'd call into the show and give a big shout out to those guys in Phoenix, Chris and Toby. I went out on my maiden voyage out to Phoenix and in my truck that I just put on the road, and it was only firing on 5 cylinders, and called them on a Sunday. I looked up Pittsburgh Power and looked up drivers for hire off their website, and Southwest Roadmaster, and man, that mobile mechanic, he came out and he put the computer on it, found out right away I needed another injector. Number 1 wasn't firing, so there wasn't one available in Phoenix anywhere. Had to get it overnighted. He handled all that. Came out, then it put the Pittsburgh Power tune on it. I just went on I'm on my way back from a run to North Carolina, and it really pulls good. I mean, I'm heavy, like almost 78,000 pounds, and Bruce knows exactly what's going on.
I remember talking to you. I said, put the injector in and let's do the tune, because you said this cat won't run. I said, we can make it run. So,
yeah. I got on my fuel gauge, fuel gauges out there. I was like, I don't know. But I had to sit there 5 days, too, because the customer couldn't receive the load. So it worked out perfectly. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. But I got 5.74 miles per gallon, almost 78,000 in this Pete 379 in 2004. And I'm passing everybody on the hills. I mean, and I'm taking it easy. I'm just trying to baby this thing and take it easy because, but I did want to, I know, Bruce, you did tell me to call you back and let's get a sweet spot on it, figure out some stuff. And I don't know if you want me to call you after the show and we can figure that out.
I can't today after the show, but I can around 5 o'clock. Between 4 and 5, call me.
4 or 5. Okay. Well, I'll be back to the terminal by 4:30, which will be.
Well, try me at 4. Try me at 3:30. And let's see.
3:30. Okay. All right. That sounds good. But yeah, I mean, it pulls. I mean, it'll.
This was the bridge, and we don't have the manifold and turbo on it yet.
Nope.
So the manifold and turbo is another half mile of the gallon, and it'll also let it run more free, and you'll push a whole lot less, plus you'll gain 80 more horsepower and about 240 more foot-pound of torque. So.
Yeah, that sounds good. Anyway, I couldn't be happier, and with just the whole thing. I mean, those guys are pro. They are. I mean, they do what they say they're going to do. They call when they're going to call. They text when they answer their phones. They show up when they're, those guys, even down to the payment, it's all pro. So if anybody needs help in Phoenix, man.
Excellent. Huh? Good.
I was on the phone with him yesterday, and you were part of the subject, and we talked about some other things, and they're looking at some other trucks to purchase.
There you go. All right, we got to keep moving.
You see, Kevin, when everything works together and our dealers work with us and the customers listen, wonderful things can happen.
It's a beautiful thing. Yep, that's for sure.
It is.
We're going to head off to Connecticut. Matt, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin, I sent you an oil sample. I was wondering if you could take a gander on it.
Yeah, let's take a look here. Boy, this looks like it's going to be an easy one. We've got a DD15. What year is it?
2016.
Okay. Looks like I don't see any mileages on here. Here we go.
617,000.
Yeah, 613 and 14,000 when you took the sample. Was there a reason we took the sample that early?
Not really. I usually just change it around that time, or am I just wasting oil?
Oh, you're absolutely wasting oil. If this is when you normally change your oil, you threw away some really, really clean oil. As a matter of fact, the next time you go to change your oil, just swing by here and drop off your old oil. I'll take it.
Perfect. All right. Should I be worried about the iron or anything, or
no? Are you using catalyst?
No. Yeah, correct.
That's why. Your other wear metals are really low, so we know the iron is just the catalyst. This oil looks like you just poured it out of the bottle. I mean, really. I would not. Gotcha. I would not sample till 25,000.
Okay. All right.
And then, really, you should just get a. Now, wait a minute. So this is a DD15. You're changing oil at 15,000. Right. Have you ever looked in your owner's manual?
No,
nobody ever does.
60,000, right? But
is it? Right. What year did you say it was? That is. I know I asked you once already. I forgot already.
2016.
16. Does anybody know? Is it the 16 50,000 or 60,000 recommended on the DD15?
I think it's 57.
Say that again.
50,000.
50. That's what I thought.
50.
So you're changing before 15,000, and the manufacturer is even saying go to 50. Don't worry. And the reason they can do that is because this engine has some bypass filtration on it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you're definitely making the oil companies even richer. We don't need to do that. They don't need any help. Yeah, they don't need any help.
All right, so I'll friggin' change it around 50 and I guess go from there. So
yeah, sample at 25 and then, maybe sample again at 40 and then you'll know if you need to change when 50 rolls around or not. Or honestly, you can wait till 50 to sample again and you'll still have plenty of time.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate the feedback, so.
You're welcome. Thanks for the call. Yeah, we
just burning money over here.
Saved you some money and time there. That's for sure. We're going to grab one more call, maybe two. I see there's another one coming in. Let's go to Ontario. Ryan, welcome to the program.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Kevin, I sent you an oil sample. Wondering if you can have a look at it.
I can. Let me get back to my oil samples again. There we go. Oh, okay, so this is a different sample. It's going to take me just a minute here.
Yeah, and I have it in hours, not miles.
Yeah, so that's even...
now.
Well, the good news is I'm not seeing anything I need to be concerned about, no matter how I look at it. This is another really clean sample. So, roughly, do you know about how many miles this would have worked out to be?
It would probably be 7,000 or 8,000. It's on a medium-duty dump truck engine, and the oil's in the sample's about a year old with 400 hours on it.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering what, with the sample results, what should I do? Like, I'm probably splitting hairs running oil that long time-wise, but it's you're coming back clean, and
you're really not. Time really doesn't hurt oil. We might get a higher oxidation number just because it's been exposed to oxygen longer, but I don't get too crazy about high oxidation if I don't see any other problems. I don't think you kept this oil in too long at all. I mean, this oil's still serviceable.
Okay, so what's your recommendation for how much more time before I sample it again? And I didn't change the filter. Like, it doesn't have bypass. It just has the factory oil filter. So should I put a new filter on it and run another
filter on there? Yeah. I'm fine extending drains and going longer on oil, but the best way to do that is make sure we've got good filtration. So even if we don't have bypass, change the factory if you're going to keep running the oil. How long did you say this was in like months?
In months, there's probably 11 months.
Honestly, I think if this is how you run this truck and this is the normal duty cycle, if you wanted to be on the safe side, I might sample every 6 months and change it when the sample tells you to.
Yeah, okay, because that's what the sample kind of told me. The little note on it was just go to the next interval is what how I kind of interpreted it.
No,
I know you have.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Your experience on it, so I want to by you and just it didn't seem to have any water contamination or didn't seem anything odd sitting around in the engine.
No, nothing at all. So I would just I just put a reminder on my calendar. I would sample every 6 months.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty, thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for the call. Let's go to Kansas, and I'll just let you know this is probably going to be our last call here on the Power Hour. We'll wrap this up, get some final thoughts from everybody. I've got John on the line. We're going to roll right into the pit right after this. So if you want to join us for some political talk, that's coming up next. Chris in Kansas, what can we help you with today?
Hi, Kevin. Hi, guys. I've got a Freightliner Classic that I'm running a C12 Caterpillar engine in it, and I keep getting blowback out of the fuel tanks. Every trip, it's stained the whole tank. So it comes out of the feeders for the engine heater and the pump heater, the fuel caps. And I've tightened these seals up so many times, and it still keeps coming out. So what can cause that?
I think it's injector cups.
That's what I was thinking. It's got a bit of I wouldn't say, it's like an imbalance when you especially when you're cold and you run it through the gears and you're building up speed. You can feel a little bit of a judder in the engine, and I was thinking it was a fuel delivery problem.
Yeah, I think you've got the bottom O-ring leaking on one is pushing pressure up and pushing the fuel back into the tank and pressurizing your fuel tank.
This engine was rebuilt like 400,000 ago.
It's okay.
No, less than that. I think it's 300 miles.
Remember what we said about metal fatigue at the beginning of the show?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're talking about an O-ring. We're talking about an O-ring. Last week I talked about fixing some problems with an O-ring. I fixed another problem with an O-ring on something, saved another couple $100 this week. So O-rings, they ask an O-ring on a diesel engine, they ask an O-ring to do a lot of sealing, but sometimes that O-ring can get hard and brittle if it's not the right O-ring, and sometimes just what it's sealed against. All it has to do is have a little bit of corrosion around it.
Okay.
Do you remember on the big cams on the going down into the water pump and the oil cooler? Sometimes we had to use silicone along with the O-ring to fix it, and you let it dry for a day, and then the problem will be gone. So.
That was kind of standard procedure.
Change the injectors cups themselves then?
Well, you'd have to take the injectors out and pressurize the cooling system. Put is it 20 pound of water pressure in there, and then look and see if you have coolant draining in on top of piston.
Okay.
Correct.
I don't.
Yeah. Now, one other thing would be the have you checked the vents in your tanks? Because if the vents aren't working properly, it's going to build pressure. So the tanks do need to be vented.
So
you have to check the ends. You have not.
I checked the ends of the hoses that come out of there, and there's nothing obstructing them. But would I need to take them out and then coupling out, and then how would I check that?
Yeah, take them out and clean them. Now, if both tanks are doing it, I doubt if two vents acted up at the same time. But again, we always want to do the easiest, cheapest things first. It takes a little bit of your time. Make sure the vents aren't an issue. Another thing would be a middle O-ring is cut on the injectors, and you're putting some fuel pressure back into the return, which would raise the amount of return to pressurize the tank.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Either way, the injectors have to check that stuff.
Yeah, the injectors have got to come out to be checking out all of that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Other than the tank vent, something you can do fairly easily.
Okay. Sounds like I got a project. Yeah. Thanks so much, Jason.
Years ago, the breather on the tank was an aluminum fitting with a steel ball. And the ball would float up and down to let pressure out. And that steel ball would corrode into the aluminum, and then the tank couldn't breathe. So we would take those out of there and just put a brass fitting in, put a hose, like a 3/8 or a 1/4-inch ID hose, and put it up over the frame rail and tie it in there, and the problem would be gone.
And if one was blocked, wouldn't that affect the feed for the tanks to balance the tanks out?
Yeah, absolutely. You build up a tremendous amount of pressure.
So would I have one tank full and one tank empty? Is that how it would work?
It could do that too.
If one is blocked, yes. If both of them are blocked, then it could do what it's doing, which is unlikely, but again, it's easy to check.
Okay, well, that's my first step, I think, before I fully inject it out. It's a 2000 truck. It's a 2000, and so it could be the original in there. I don't know. I did have the truck painted about a year ago, and they painted the tanks as well. But they have plugged something up that way. Maybe.
Possible.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, certainly possible.
Yep. Okay. Well, I really enjoyed listening to you guys talking on the show, so keep it up, eh?
We'll do. Thanks for the call. Thanks for your support. All right, we're going to wrap this up, and we're going to roll on into the pit. Thanks to our special guest for today, David Counts. David, anything you want to wrap up with? What do you want people to know about Fleet air filters these days?
Just make sure that the filters that are out there, these guys have, that they're washing them like they're supposed to. I mean, that's what the filters are for. To clean, keep your fuel mileage up.
You know the one thing I like to tell people about Fleet air filters?
What's that?
If you don't have one, get one. Why wouldn't you?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, if you don't have one, get one. If you don't even, we didn't spend a lot of time on the filter itself today. We've been talking about them for years. Why this is a much, much better technology than those stupid old paper filters. So if you want to know all the benefits, give them a call. Just get one. That's the easiest thing I can tell people. Just get one.
Absolutely.
All right. Anybody have anything they want to wrap up with? All right. Looks like we're going to get out of here easy then. Thanks again, David, and the team from Pittsburgh Power. We'll do it again next week. Be safe. Be profitable, be fit and healthy, always do the hard work and master the journey.